Hello, America. This is Call of Duty Goddess. Today is May the 30th, 2016, Memorial Day. In honor of Memorial Day, I would like to thank all of our veterans and all of our military for their service. This video is dedicated in memory to all of our fallen soldiers, missing in action, prisoners of war, and wounded warriors. On this Memorial Day, I would like to talk about Extortion 17, which was the single largest loss in the history of U.S. Special Forces. On August 6, 2011, in Logar Province, Afghanistan, just before 2 a.m. local time, 30 Americans, including 17 members of the elite SEAL team that had killed Osama bin Laden 14 weeks earlier, were scrambled aboard a Vietnam-era U.S. Army National Guard Chinook helicopter, codename Extortion 17. The old Chinook was not the type of helicopter typically used by the SEALs. Special Forces units typically attack with specially equipped, highly armed Special Operations helicopters with highly sophisticated electronic and jamming systems, flown by Special Operations pilots trained to insert the SEALs with swiftness, speed, and surprise. But the Chinook was not an assault helicopter. It did not have significant offense capabilities, and it was not designed for high-speed assaults carried out by U.S. Special Forces. The Chinook was a transport chopper and was not designed to fly into hot combat zone. Its crew was a National Guard crew, trained to transport troops and equipment, but not trained or equipped for special operations in hot battle zones. The Americans boarding the chopper ranged in age from the youngest, 21-year-old Specialist Spencer C. Duncan of Kansas, to the oldest of the group, 47-year-old Chief Warrant Officer David Carter of Colorado. Two of the men, Lieutenant Commander Jonas Kelshaw, the SEAL commander, and Chief Petty Officer Robert Reeves, had been best friends since their high school days in Shreveport, Louisiana, and even played on the same high school football team. 16 of the men had wives back at home in the United States, and 32 American children called these men Dad. 3 of the men, Navy Senior Officer Craig Vickers of Hawaii, Navy Chief SEAL Matt Mason of Kansas, and Senior Chief Tommy Retzlaff of Arkansas, had wives who were expecting their third child. Vickers was on his last tour with the Navy and planned to retire and return home to his family in May of 2012. Like Craig Vickers, 42-year-old Senior Chief Lou Langlius, one of the most highly decorated and experienced SEALs in the Navy, was also on his last combat deployment and planned to return to a stateside job as a trainer where he would reunite with his wife and their 2 boys in Santa Monica. 7 mysterious Afghan commandos, along with 1 Afghan interpreter, joined these remarkable Americans on the helicopter that night. The presence of the unknown Afghans, whose names were not on the flight manifest, breached all semblances of the military and aviation protocol. Within minutes of takeoff, every American on board Extortion 17 died a horrific, fiery death in a crash that would mark the deadliest single loss in the 11-year-old Afghan war, and the single largest loss in the history of the United States Special Forces. Why did these men die? Their children and wives deserve to know. Their parents and their country deserve an answer. Powerful evidence now suggests there was a cover-up to prevent the truth from ever getting out. What is being covered up? Several signs suggest the Taliban were tipped off as to the Chinook's flight path and were lying in wait with rocket-propelled grenades as it approached the landing zone. Invaluable forensic evidence has been inexcusably lost, negligently or intentionally destroyed by the military, or conveniently glossed over to obfuscate the truth as to why these men died. Even if the Taliban had no inside information, which appears unlikely, the decision to order a platoon of U.S. Navy SEALs and supporting troops into a highly vulnerable and largely defenseless Vietnam-era National Guard helicopter, a CH-47 Chinook piloted by a noble crew of National Guard aviators who were ill-equipped and untrained in the Special Forces aviation techniques necessary to prosecute this mission. Each and every American on board's fate was sealed as soon as they entered that helicopter that night. For the sake of the 32 children who lost their fathers, for the 16 wives who lost their husbands, for the sake of the 60 parents who lost their sons, and for the sake of a nation that deserves better from its leadership in protecting its treasured sons in time of war, hard questions need to be asked. Let's hear from the loved ones of these brave Americans about their family members who died a horrific death.
Well, Navy SEAL Team 6 became a household name after members of that elite unit took out Osama bin Laden in May of 2011. But the same unit suffered tragedy just 3 months later when a helicopter carrying 30 American troops, most of them members of SEAL Team 6, was blasted out of the sky by Taliban forces in Afghanistan. Among the Americans killed, Sergeant Patrick Hamburger of the Nebraska National Guard and Navy SEALs Michael Strange and Aaron Vaughn. Their families say now their deaths did not have to happen. In an emotional news conference at the National Press Club in Washington yesterday, they blamed the Obama administration for what they call serious missteps leading to their sons' deaths, and they are pushing for a congressional investigation.
The U.S. government and many high-ranking military people own more credit for the shoot-down than the Taliban. Political correctness, building the esteem of the Afghans, leveling of the playing field, and failure by the Obama administration to name the enemy and to accurately identify the savage ideology our warriors are up against has made an otherwise primitive foe formidable.
Why was there no pre-assault fire? We were told as families that because pre-assault fire damages our efforts to win the hearts and minds of our enemy. So in other words, the hearts and minds of our enemy are more valuable to this government than my son's blood.
We go to Dover to see the bodies, and we're all in the hangar down there, and President Obama comes up to me and he says, "Mr. Strange," he grabs me by the shoulders, "Michael changed the way America lives." I grabbed Mr. President by the shoulders and I said, "I don't need to know about my son. I need to know what happened."
Wow. Joining me now, Karen and Billy Vaughn, parents of Aaron Vaughn. Karen and Billy, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the service of your son and your family to our nation and for the extraordinary sacrifice you've all made. Let me start with you on this, Karen. Why do you believe this was anything other than a tragic accident?
Megan, thank you first for allowing us to come on and tell our story. As we uncovered documentation that we were given actually by the military from the investigation, from the full investigation of the crash, the more we read through the documentation, the more we realized there were serious issues in front of us. We found out, first of all, that the men were flying on a CH-47D that was built in the 1960s. They were not flying on aviation that's proper equipment, the aviation they train with, the MH-47s that they train with here in the United States with the 160th Special Aviators. We found that they flew into the Tangi River Valley unescorted. This was not standard protocol. According to military testimony, in over 400 missions, two commanders said they had never done an operation like this. Another thing that we learned is nobody could explain the importance of the mission. Why? When you send up a quick reactionary force, is what the SEALs reaction was called that night when they flew in. That should only be done when they're under very grave, serious circumstances because, according to military testimony, when a battle is underway, as was that night, 3.5 hours of it, the entire valley was in a heightened state of alert, which means it's very dangerous to bring another crew in by chopper. That's the most vulnerable position warriors will ever find themselves in, is in a helicopter. And then we give them an antiquated helicopter to fly in unescorted with no pre-assault fire. That's just a few of the...
And so do you believe then that this was just incompetence by our military, by our government, or that this was something worse than incompetence? Let me ask you that, Billy.
Okay, I'll tell you, at this time, our military's slogan, or in the documents, is called "Relentless Pursuit of the Enemy." And I'll tell you, I don't know where it came from, but it makes about as much sense in what it's referring to as the Affordable Health Care Act. Karen told you there was no pre-assault fire. We had air weapons teams overhead. They weren't allowed to fire. They sat there and watched their American brothers be slain, even after they were shot down. Knowing where the shots came from, the RPGs were fired from, they did not fire back. Here again, because of the rules of engagement. And let me just say, I know that there will be military people who will come forward and tell you that the CH-47 is just fine. You need to look at the information we have. And we've talked to many retired generals who have said the CH-47 is a good airframe for what it was designed to do. It is not designed to go in the middle of the dark as an assault machine. And that's what they used it for.
Let me ask you this.
Night.
Let me ask you this, and I know you two have been forced to get intimately familiar with these terms and you know, these protocols, but forgive me because I am not as familiar as you are. But I'm trying to understand whether you are alleging that there was incompetence. They used the wrong helicopter, it wasn't necessary, it wasn't handled well, or whether you think this is something greater, some sort of, because I know you said yesterday at the press conference you feel they put a target on your son's back. Yeah. So help us understand where you're going with these allegations.
Let me answer the target on the back part. As soon as Joe Biden announced that it was a SEAL team who took out bin Laden, within 24 hours my son called me. And I rarely heard him ever sound afraid in his adult life. And he said, "Mom," his tone was extraordinarily serious. He said, "You need to wipe your social media clean. I mean, you need to get everything off of it now." And I said, "Of course, son, I will. What's wrong?" And he said, "Mom, there's chatter and your life is in danger. Our lives are in danger. So clean it up right now." The community was very unnerved by that unveiling. So yes, a target got put on their back, and it got put on the backs of every group that would work with SEAL Team 6 from that point forward. They actually confirmed Karzai's immediate remarks that it was SEAL Team 6, which raises a lot of questions. You asked about suspicions. There are a lot of questions we have unanswered, and we don't want to get into conspiracy theories, but there are some staggering things that we've learned, such as the 7 Afghanis that were on the manifest that night were not the Afghanis that died. In other words, we found out they were switched out at the very last minute in such a rush that the manifest couldn't be changed, which is very, very dangerous and very uncommon.
And so you have a suspicion that perhaps there was some manipulation to get this particular helicopter because it was so heavily loaded with SEAL Team 6 members who our own president acknowledged were behind the bin Laden raid.
Megan, at this time, we're still learning a lot of things. And we actually learned some more information about what Karen just told you there about that. Yesterday afternoon, after the press conference, somebody came forward. What I would like to say about, yes, it's incompetence on the part of Vice President Joe Biden. And I'll tell you what, the media has let this man get away with saying Uncle Joe's gaffes, Uncle Joe's gaffes. This is not Uncle Joe, and he's not some senile old grandfather. He is the second in command of the most powerful country in the world. And he needs to take responsibility for the comments he makes and quit being given a pass. And I'd like to say something else. We don't want to tear down the military. Our military men and women are risking, they volunteer to go off and fight. And we want to save the military. We want to save what's going on. The rules of engagement are leading to the unnecessary losses of our warriors. And we want to call on the American people, because government is not correcting this. We've been working on this ever since our son died. And government is doing nothing. They sympathize with the enemy. They sympathize with the ideology. We need American men and women. We need mothers and fathers to come forward who may even have similar circumstances like this where they've lost warriors. We the Americans, citizens, are the ones who can change this. And there is one thing that I would like.
I've got to
Go
go,
ahead.
but
Okay, Maggie.
I thank you both so much. I'm sorry to cut you off. I did want to just tell the audience quickly, the Pentagon says that they share in the grief of all the families who lost their loved ones. This is a tragic loss during a difficult campaign, and we'll post their full statement on our website. Karen, Billy, all the best to you.
Megan, thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much, Megan. Thank you.
God bless your son.
In an interview, Mr. Vaughn stated that the soldiers that witnessed the attack were not allowed to fire on the enemy that shot the helicopter down. I say this with love and respect to our military. Remember who your oath is to. It is to the Constitution, to your brothers, and to the American people, not a president or a commander.
Next, we're going to hear from former Navy SEAL Benjamin Smith. We'll talk from his personal experience.
I don't have much to say. Part of what makes us one of the best Spec Op fighting forces amongst all the rest of them is the mystique of who we are. We have found in the past, we can go to administration if you want, whatever, but the American people, even in the past year and a half, 2 years, have divulged basically who we are, what we do. We have movies, strategy, tactics, movements of everything is out there. Now you can get a Trident or any Spec Op shirt in a mall. What have we become? The people who do the dirty work, the tough stuff that you have to earn to go do, you can buy in a t-shirt. Part of this is also our society, as well as you have an administration that is just, they've never done anything as if their life depends on it. Like with the politicians, with the media, with a lot of the people. They've never had to struggle for anything. They've never had to get down in that dirt and fight for something. I mean, just to be here, I'm absolutely honored to know you guys, to help you guys get the word out. The things that have happened here, outside of the religious aspect of this, that is absolutely miserable. And there should be a lot of people in this country very angry, because we're only 200 years old and we supposedly have won all of our wars. Islam is 1,400 years old. They don't like us before we were even a breath or a thought. Do we have a chance? Are we not Sharia compliant already? And now you have an administration putting our people at risk. And now with beforehand foreknowledge of our people going in, is that not treason? Is that... I pray for our country. I just hope we wake up in due time to help try and save ourselves if we are not gone already. Thank you.
Many people who watch this video may believe that our military is invading other countries for the wrong reasons. That may or may not be true, but people that join the military are more brave than I could ever hope to be, and they will need to be even more brave when they start to understand that our government is actively working against them and the American people. I have a working theory on why all of the cover-ups are taking place, as well as so-called missing airliners and flights that have been shot down over the past few years. And it all has to do with operations to arm so-called freedom fighters in the Middle East. One of these operations was brought to my attention by looking into Benghazi, and that's Operation Zero Footprint. I wonder how many other operations have been going on that we don't know about. This is Call of Duty Goddess signing off, and as always, I've got your 6.